There comes a moment in life when your silence has to speak louder than their noise. When your calm becomes your power, not your weakness.
Feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.
You've been reacting too much. You've been giving away your peace like it's cheap. Every little jab, every little insult, every manipulation, they press your buttons because they know you'll respond. And every time you do, you give them exactly what they want, control. But what if I told you that the real power begins the moment you stop reacting? The moment you stop letting people own your emotions. Some people aren't trying to understand you, they're trying to break you. They don't want clarity, they want chaos. They don't want peace, they want power over your mind. And you've got to stop playing into it. You've got to rise above it. You've got to make them wonder why their games don't work on you anymore. Your silence must become sacred. Your peace must become your personal sanctuary. Because the strongest version of you is the one who doesn't flinch when provoked. The one who walks away without saying a word. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally untouchable. When you finally understand what emotional detachment really means, something inside you changes. It's not about becoming numb or indifferent. It's about protecting the part of you that gets torn apart every time you let someone's words dictate your worth. You see, some people will keep hurting you as long as you keep reacting. They'll keep pulling your strings as long as they know which buttons to press. And so you learn to detach, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace. You can love people, support them, and still choose not to be emotionally entangled in their storms. You can stand in the same room as someone who used to make your soul tremble and not even flinch. That's not coldness. That's growth. That's strength. That's you learning the hard way that self-respect sometimes looks like silence, like distance, like walking away from people who don't value your heart. You start realizing that not every argument deserves your voice, not every insult deserves your attention, and not every situation deserves your energy. Emotional detachment is what happens when you've been burned enough time to stop walking into the fire with your eyes closed. The truth is, the world doesn't always reward softness. Some people take your kindness for weakness. They see your compassion as permission to cross boundaries. And the more you allow it, the more they expect it. That's where emotional detachment becomes your shield. It's the decision to stay centered even when everything around you is trying to pull you off balance. You no longer explain yourself to people who've already decided not to understand you. You no longer defend your truth to those who twist it for their own comfort. You no longer beg to be seen, heard, or valued by people who are blind to your worth. You stop chasing closure and start building boundaries. Because emotional detachment is a sign that you've finally chosen yourself. It's a sign that you've stopped making your peace negotiable. You're no longer driven by guilt, by fear, by the urge to fix everything and everything. You sit back, observe, and protect your inner space like your life depends on it. Because sometimes it does. You reach a stage where your silence isn't empty. It's full of power. It speaks louder than words. It communicates what explanations never could. Because when you're emotionally detached, you no longer feel the urge to defend your emotions to those who invalidate them. You start valuing your mental clarity more than temporary satisfaction. There's no longer a need to shout, scream, or argue just to prove your point. You're okay with being misunderstood if it means you stay at peace. That shift is powerful. It's the moment you stop trying to control how others treat you and start controlling how you react to how they treat you. That's where freedom lives. When they try to provoke you and you don't move, they lose their grip. When they expect a fight and you give them nothing but silence, they panic. Because they realize they no longer have access to you the way they used to. That emotional distance becomes your armor. And that armor is built not out of bitterness, but out of lessons learned from pain. Most people think emotional detachment is coldness because they're used to relationships that run on emotional chaos. Drama, fights, emotional highs and lows. Some people think that's love. That's connection. But when you evolve, you stop needing those toxic cycles to feel seen. You don't crave validation through conflict anymore. You've been through enough to know that peace is more valuable than proving a point. You start craving stability, silence, solitude, because those things don't lie to you, they don't betray you, they don't play games, Emotional detachment is what happens when you love yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. It's what happens when you no longer want to be the hero in someone else's story. You just want to be whole in your own. It's not indifference, it's intelligent. You've learned that not everyone who wants access to you deserves it. Some people don't want love, they want control. And detachment says, not anymore. Not here. Not with me. You start seeing your energy as currency. And just like you wouldn't hand out your money to anyone on the street, you stop handing out your emotional energy to people who haven't earned it. You stop attending every argument you're invited to. You stop replying to messages that drain you. You stop justifying your worth to people who benefit from your doubt. Emotional detachment becomes your way of saying, I matter. My peace matters. And every time you choose silence over reaction, every time you walk away instead of engaging, you invest in yourself. You're not ignoring things. You're prioritizing healing. You're not running from confrontation. You're choosing clarity. You're no longer on the battlefield because you realize you were never supposed to fight those wars in the first place. Some people thrive on emotional chaos because it distracts them from their own emptiness. Don't let them drag you into their storm. You've worked too hard to build your calm. Let them talk. Let them spin their lies. You rise above, not because you're passive, but because you're powerful. There's a kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't scream, doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. That's what emotional detachment gives you. It gives you back your identity. You start remembering who you were before people made you question yourself. You remember what it felt like to breathe without someone else controlling the air. You remember the taste of silence that isn't lonely but liberating. You realize that loving people doesn't mean letting them hurt you. You can care deeply and still walk away. You can forgive and still move on. You don't have to carry everyone's weight on your shoulders to prove you're good. You don't have to suffer to earn love. Emotional detachment allows you to set people down gently, firmly, permanently when you realize they're too heavy for your healing. And in doing so, you find yourself again, lighter, freer, more whole. You learn to protect your energy the same way you protect your home, not out of fear, but out of respect for what's inside. When you become emotionally detached, you don't stop feeling, you start choosing what you feel and who you feel it for. You stop letting strangers inside your soul. You stop letting people live rent-free in your mind. You take back your space, your silence, your stillness. And yes, people will call you cold. They'll say you've changed. But they'll never admit that you stopped letting them feed off your reaction. You became immune to their manipulation. You stopped needing their validation. You became untouchable, not because you shut down, but because you woke up. And when you wake up to your worth, you start seeing everything differently. You see who drained you, who used you, who only loved you when you were easy to control. And instead of getting angry, you get better. You get clearer, you get stronger. You rise not in noise, but in power. And the world takes notice, not because you shouted, but because your silence thundered. There is something undeniably powerful about a person who chooses calm in the middle of chaos. It throws people off. It breaks their rhythm. It dismantles the control they thought they had over your emotions. You see, when someone is trying to get under your skin, they're not looking for peace. They're looking for power. They want a reaction, an outburst, anything that proves they can still manipulate your spirit. And when you give them nothing but silence, when you respond with grace instead of rage, it shakes them. Because people who depend on your reaction to feel important will always feel powerless in your calm. They come with noise, expecting noise in return. But when you give them stillness, they don't know what to do. That's when you take back the power. You stop dancing to their rhythm. You stop letting them lead the emotional narrative. You learn that your calm is not weakness, it's your strength. It's your shield. It's your way of saying, I'm not giving you that access anymore. And when you reach that level of emotional discipline, you start to notice something beautiful. The chaos outside of you no longer touches the peace within you. When someone tries to provoke you and fails, it burns them more than your anger ever could. They want you to flinch, to yell, to cry, to break. Because as long as you're reacting, they're in control. As long as you're triggered, they're winning. But when you don't respond, When you maintain your composure, they're forced to sit with their own behavior. They're left standing in the storm they created, with no one to drag into it. That's when the power begins to shift. They start questioning themselves. They start losing grip. Because your calm reflects something they don't have, self-mastery. And that scares them. It scares them because it reminds them that they can't reach you anymore. You're not the same person who used to explode or break down or beg. You're not handing out emotional access like candy. You're reserved, you're measured, you're intentional. And that shift is everything. Your calmness is your protection. It's your statement that you no longer live at the mercy of other people's chaos. That you've built a sanctuary within yourself, and not everyone gets a key. Calm is the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who they are. It doesn't need to scream to be heard. It doesn't need to fight to be respected. And when you operate from that kind of presence, the ones who used to control you with chaos begin to fade. Because their tactics don't work anymore. Their sarcasms, their mind games, their silent treatments, they bounce off your peace like pebbles on a mountain. They throw emotional punches that don't land. They bait you with insults, but you don't bite. And every time you hold your peace, you win. Every time you walk away without clapping back, you grow stronger, because calm isn't just emotional control. It's a lifestyle. It's a statement that says, I refuse to let your chaos live rent-free in my soul. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending your decisions. You stop giving your energy to those who wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. And in that space, your confidence grows. You start to feel taller, even if nothing else changes, because now you own your reactions. And that changes everything. People who thrive on chaos will always test your calm. They'll push your buttons just to see if you still bleed. And when you don't, they panic, because your peace exposes their instability. Your silence reveals how loud their insecurity is. And your ability to stay grounded highlights just how lost they are in their own drama. That's why your calm is so dangerous to them. It's a mirror. It shows them everything they haven't dealt with inside themselves. Shows them that no matter how loud they get, they can't shake someone who's mastered stillness. But you didn't get to this place overnight. You earned your calm through pain, through betrayal, through nights when you broke down alone. You earned it by choosing healing over revenge, understanding over reaction, peace over power struggles. And now that you built it, you don't give it away so easily. You protect it like sacred ground, because you know what it cost to get here. You know what it took to break those old habits, to silence those reactive urges, to pause instead of pounce. And you're not going back. Not for anyone. Your calm becomes your filter. It decides who gets to stay in your life and who doesn't. Because when you no longer respond to disrespect, it reveals who respects you without the need for drama. It exposes the ones who are only there for the reaction. You start noticing how quiet people get when they realize they can't control you anymore. How quickly they disappear when they can't shake your energy. That's the power of calm. It clears your path. It makes room for those who match your peace. You don't need to yell to be heard anymore. You don't need to prove your worth. You just are. And the people who see that, who honor that, begin to show up. While the ones who are only interested in the noise, they fall off because they never wanted your peace. They wanted your reaction. And now that they can't get it, they move on to someone else who hasn't learned what you've learned. That's why calm is not only protection, it's direction. It points you toward people who love in peace, not in chaos. Let them talk, let them assume, let them spin their stories. That's their chaos, not yours. You don't owe anyone a reaction just because they expect one. You're not obligated to set yourself on fire just to light up their attention. The more you choose calm, the more they start to fear it. Because calm is unpredictable. It's mysterious. They don't know what's going on in your head anymore. And that bothers them. It used to be easy to get a rise out of you. Now, your face doesn't flinch. Your voice stays steady. Your eyes stay clear. That's terrifying to someone who feeds off emotional control. And you start to see how weak their games really are when they can't provoke you. Because provocation is only powerful if it leads to reaction. And when there's no reaction, there's no reward. That's when their power dies. Not with a bang, but with your silence, with your stillness, with your decision to protect your peace above all else. And there's no louder message than that. No greater revenge, no higher growth. This kind of calm is not for the faint-hearted. It takes practice, discipline, pain. You don't just wake up calm, you build it. You train your mind to pause. You remind your heart to stay still. You breathe when everything in you wants to explode. And that training over time transforms you. You start noticing your triggers before they grip you. You start seeing the game before it even begins. And when you're no longer playing it, you're no longer a piece on someone else's board. You become the player. You choose your moves. You sit in your power. That's the calm I'm talking about. The calm that doesn't move for storms. It is the eye of the storm. The calm that carries weight without making noise. The calm that shakes the room just by being still. That's what they can't handle. That's what they didn't expect. Because you used to react, and now you don't. You used to crumble, and now you breathe. That's how you take the power back. That's how you become untouchable. One calm breath at a time. Of all the strengths a person can build, learning to pause before you react might just be the most life-changing, because in that small, silent space between stimulus and response, between what they did and how you choose to answer, is where your entire future can shift. That pause is not weakness, that pause is wisdom. It's restraint when everything in your body wants to erupt. It's control when your pride is screaming for revenge. That pause says, I'm not letting you write my story with your chaos. I'm choosing how this plays out. But here's the truth. That pause doesn't come naturally. It's not easy. It's a habit built out of broken moments, when reacting didn't fix a thing, when your fire only burned you. So now, instead of throwing words like daggers, you breathe. Instead of exploding, you observe. And in doing so, you save yourself. You protect your energy. You become someone who doesn't let others dictate their emotional climate. The pause is your shield. It's your power. It's the space where you remember who you are and who you refuse to become again. That moment between action and reaction is the birthplace of strength, and you must train your soul to live there. There was a time you used to react without thinking. The insult came and your words followed. The disrespect hit and your anger exploded. But where did it ever lead you? Did it ever bring peace, or did it just drain you, leave you replaying the moment in your head all night long? You see, reacting feels powerful in the moment, but it robs you of real power in the long run. That's where the pause changes everything. When you learn to pause, you gain clarity. You step back, you breathe, you weigh the cost. You stop letting your emotions drive the car and let your wisdom take the wheel. The pause is where your strength sharpens. It's where you stop being a puppet pulled by triggers and become a person led by purpose. You start seeing that not every battle is worth your peace. Not every insult deserves your voice. And not every situation requires your involvement. That pause gives you options. It gives you time. It gives you control in a world trying to take it from you. And the more you practice it, the more powerful you become. Not loud, not aggressive, but unshakable. Training yourself to pause is like building a new muscle. It's awkward at first. It feels unnatural when you're used to firing back, used to defending yourself, used to reacting like your emotions are emergencies. But with time, that pause becomes your superpower. It teaches you that not everything deserves a response, and not every situation needs your energy. You begin to understand that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means maturity, because you've learned that peace is more valuable than being right, that self-respect is more precious than the last word, that walking away with your dignity is better than staying and lowering yourself to someone else's level. That pause teaches you discipline. It teaches you patience. It teaches you the art of holding power, not proving it. And when the world sees you stay composed in moments that used to break you, they won't know how to handle it. The same people who used to get reactions out of you will now see a version of you that's untouchable. Calm, focused, powerful in stillness. Because you've rewired your instincts, you've retrained your reactions, you've made peace your default. And that's something no one can take away from you. Most people don't pause, they react. They speak before thinking. They respond out of ego, out of anger, out of fear. But here's the truth. People who master the pause hold the keys to their emotional freedom. When you pause, you create a gap between what they do and how you respond. And in that gap, you choose who you want to be. You're no longer a slave to impulse. You're not tossed around by mood swings and triggers. You're grounded, intentional, purposeful. And that's rare because it's easier to react. It's easier to lash out. It takes real strength to stay silent, to reflect, to decide how to respond from a place of self-respect instead of self-defense. That pause saves relationships. It protects your reputation. It guards your peace. 1 second of discipline can save you from hours of regret. And the more you honor that space, the more you start to rise above the noise. You no longer live in reaction mode. You live in response mode. You lead yourself. You command your emotions instead of being commanded by them. That's not just growth. That's mastery. That's the power of someone who refuses to give away control. You won't always get it right. Some days the emotions will boil over before the pause can catch them. But even in those moments, you're learning. You're training your mind to slow down. You're building awareness. You're making progress. And progress is messy, but it's powerful. Each time you pause before reacting, you build a stronger foundation inside of you. You start noticing your triggers instead of becoming them. You stop absorbing every word, every action, every insult like a sponge. You become a filter instead. You decide what gets in and what doesn't. That pause is the difference between regret and resilience, between lashing out and letting go. It teaches you to sit with your feelings instead of throwing them at someone else. And in that sitting, in that stillness, you start hearing yourself more clearly. You hear what matters. You hear what's noise. You hear what needs healing. And suddenly you're no longer reacting from wounds. You're responding from wisdom. That's when you start to feel peace, not just as an idea, but as your default state of being. Think about how many times you've regretted the words you spoke in anger. How many times you've wished you could go back and pause, breathe, and choose differently. That's what makes the pause so powerful. It saves you from becoming someone you're not. You can't control how others treat you, but you can always control how you show up. That pause gives you back your dignity. It allows you to choose grace when it's hardest. It puts the power back in your hands. No one can take that moment from you unless you hand it over. And every time you pause, you reinforce your inner strength. You prove to yourself that you are more than your triggers, that you are more than the pain someone tried to bring into your space. You become the calm in the storm, not because the storm isn't there, but because you've trained your soul to stay grounded through it. That's rare. That's powerful. That's who you're becoming. Someone who walks through fire and doesn't burn because they learn to pause and not panic, to breathe and not break, to rise instead of react. Not about being passive. It's about being precise. The pause doesn't mean you're ignoring what happened. It means you're deciding what deserves your energy. That's power most people never tap into. They spend their lives reacting, fighting, defending, chasing, never realizing they're being controlled by everyone but themselves. But you're doing the hard work. You're learning to master that moment. You're choosing to be the calm in the conversation, the stillness in the storm, the strength in the silence. That doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel deeply and still choose peace. That's a different kind of warrior. And the more you train yourself to pause, the more you begin to notice the world slow down around you. What used to shake you now passes like a breeze. What used to control you now fades into background noise because you're no longer reacting out of habit. You're responding out of wisdom. You're leading with peace. You're anchored in truth. And that changes everything. The pause isn't just a moment. It's a decision, a discipline, a doorway to the best version of yourself. When you reach that place within where your calm cannot be shaken, where your silence holds more weight than 1,000 angry words, you begin to understand what true strength really feels like. You're no longer a prisoner to your emotions, no longer reacting to every jab, every insult, every moment of chaos designed to throw you off center. Instead, you hold your ground with quiet dignity. You observe without absorbing. You protect your peace like the sacred treasure it is. And in that stillness, in that pause, in that emotional discipline, you find power, clarity, and control over your life. the kind of control that no one can take from you. The determined, reliable, alert, and a leader. The impressible. You've learned that emotional detachment doesn't mean you're cold, it means you're wise. You've seen how your calm dismantles their manipulation. You've felt the peace that comes when you stop chasing closure, when you stop attending battles that were never yours. And most of all, you've realized that pausing before reacting isn't weakness, it's self-respect in motion. It's wisdom in practice. It's the decision to no longer allow someone else's chaos to decide your character. You don't have to raise your voice to make an impact. You don't have to fight to win. You simply have to not show up to the war they started in their own mind. So keep your peace, keep your pause, stay rooted in your truth. Let others speak from their wounds, but you speak from your healing. Let them expect your reaction and give them your stillness. Let them anticipate a storm and watch how your silence becomes the thunder they never expected. You don't owe anyone your chaos anymore. You owe yourself your calm. You owe yourself the strength you fought so hard to build. And that right there is what makes you untouchable. Thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing growth over chaos, stillness over storms. Stay strong, stay calm, and above all, stay in control of you. God bless you.
If Denzel Washington's words inspired you today, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned for more wisdom, motivation, and powerful lessons in the upcoming videos. Until next time, keep the faith, keep pushing, and remember the greatness within you.